Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, Three Principles practitioner, Adey-Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading Three Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
I'm very happy to have Laurie Holmes here with me today. Laurie is a spiritual teacher, author, intuitive, certified transformative coach, clarity mentor, trainer and facilitator of women's groups, massage therapist, grandmother, and a curious explorer of life's endless highways of opportunities, creativities, and adventures just waiting to be uncovered and discovered. She lives in Harderville, South Carolina, with her bossy cat, Chloe, and sees each day with fresh eyes and a contagious zest for life. Welcome, Laurie, and thank you so much for being with us today. We keep passing on Facebook and different groups and things like that, so I'm just thrilled to have you here on the show. And as I was saying, I read your website, and you are a woman of many, many gifts, and you've obviously had lots of incarnations in this lifetime alone. So
Still having them.
Still having them. I know, it's fabulous. I mean, you seem to be doing so many different things. So I was curious because, as I said, you've done all these different things. When did you actually first come across the principles, as this is mostly about principles? So,
Yeah. Well, I was doing a course for the International Coach Academy that started in 2010, and I had a brief kind of like go off it for a couple of years and then jump back on about 2012 to finish one of the courses. And while I was doing that, I came across transformational life coaching. And I thought, oh, that kind of rings a bell with something I did, over 35 years ago. At that time, it was the S training.
oh, yeah.
So that was my introduction to transformational work. And the first time I ever heard the word coaching. But I didn't coach then. I mean, I did get paid for it, let's put it that way.
Mhm.
But so my sojourn goes back over 40 years. But the actual principles, I didn't understand them until I started reading both Jamie Smart's book, Clarity,
Mhm.
and Michael Neal's book, Super Coach 101. And I did a course with Michael Neal back in 2013, just before I jumped into Super Coach Academy. And it was he called it a master's class. So that was my introduction to the principles, and actually what created the first genuine insight that I had that really lasted for a very long time and allowed me to get further my trainings with Super Coach Academy, and then clarity training with Jamie Smart, and then trainer training with Jamie Smart. So it was like 3-4 years in a row
Yeah.
that I was doing all these different coach trainings.
Wonderful. Well, I want to know what this first big insight was that you had, or experienced rather.
I'll be glad to share that one. That was so it was a story that was being told during a lunch break. Like they'd had a lunch break. I'm living in South Carolina, and so at 9 a.m. in London, it was like 4 a.m. for me. Just to give you an idea. So I was not very wide awake. I was getting into this course. I had no idea what I was in for. I didn't understand what the principles of that time were. And I was getting just glimpses, just tiny little glimpses of this understanding. And then a guy went off to have lunch and in London, and he approached 3 homeless men, and he shared his understanding with them. Now, at that point, I didn't really get it yet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't understand what the understanding was. So it was even more miraculous that I would even have an insight given that.
Mm-hmm.
But so how the story goes, and I'm going to not worry that I'm pretty much paraphrasing what I remember of it.
Mm-hmm.
He met 3 homeless men that were sitting on the street. And he said, look, I have something I want to share with you. It's going to last about an hour and a half, and I'm going to give you 40 quid each just to listen to me. And one of the men had a speech impediment where he didn't speak very well. He didn't speak hardly at all. And if he did, you couldn't understand him anyway. And so when I'll say it was Martin, I won't say his last name, but when Martin finished his conversation with them, this man who had not been speaking for a very, very long time basically jumped up and said, "I get it. I made it all up," and off he went. Now I'm in my home listening to this, and it was like I got hit with a brick. Wow. And I didn't even know it. It was like I didn't know it because that was like Sunday. And Monday I woke up, and I woke up into the quietest mind I've ever experienced in my entire life. And I missed Chatty Cathy inside my head up to that point. So I didn't know what the idea of having a quiet mind even meant, let alone experience it. And I remember I was just in awe of the fact that I didn't have all this thinking going on. And I had no idea what had happened. It was like a real surprise to me. And that lasted for about 4 days, and then the thinking slowly came back in. And I didn't quite know what to make of that, but I thought, wow, something happened here, and I've got to find out more. And that was why I ended up at Super Coach Academy. But it was just really the insight was that my thinking really was made up.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to live in that world anymore.
I love that. I know it's so funny. Years ago, before I came across the real sort of, the teaching of it, we all know it's all going on, whether we know about it or not. That's how our experience is brought to life. But I remember years ago, I used to say to myself, I'm making up shit here. I might as well make up good shit, because I knew, because I knew I had all this negative self-talk in my head. And it was like, I'm the one that's saying the stuff, not other people. So why am I believing it? So, well, that was lovely. That was really great. It's amazing. I took a little longer. I didn't have that epiphany like you did, but still, I'm really glad I'm here. But what I wanted to talk to you about today, I know you, how are you feeling? I should ask you that first. I know you've been through a lot of medical issues lately. So how are you feeling
now
today?
I'm doing great, but I have a big surgery coming up in about a month.
Yeah.
So you can ask me then.
Okay, I'll circle back around on that. But you wanted to talk about, going through these understandings about how the principles have helped you as you're going through all of these experiences that you're going through on with medical issues. You talked about resilience and gratitude. So I'd love you to talk a bit more about how the principles are helping you navigate through this.
Well, I think I shared briefly with you that 2 years ago, I was going to have a normal, I call it a normal procedure. I have something called Barrett's esophagus. I have ever since I had my first ulcer back in 2002. And I just turned 67, so you could do the math. I don't know how old I was, but whatever that was. And so I've been on GERD medication ever since. And there's some erosion going on in my esophagus that they call Barrett's esophagus. And every 5 years since it was discovered, I have to have an endoscopy. And that's where they stick the tube down your throat. And I also have to have a colonoscopy, and I hope I don't have to explain that one.
That's okay. I think we can use our imagination on that one.
Right. And so basically I went in for this, what I thought would be a very simple procedure. I've had it done before. And when I woke up from the surgery, as I was coming to, I noticed that I was in a lot of pain. I had pain on the right side of my neck and down the right side, all the way down my right leg. And I thought that was pretty strange. And I noticed I could move my head a little bit, and I could shrug my shoulders a little bit. And that's where it ended. And the doctor came by to say, how I see you waking up. We just wanted to go over your report and let you know you're doing fine. We didn't really find anything, blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, you can get up anytime now. And I looked at him and I said, no, I can't. And I wasn't even aware at that moment that was even the truth.
Mm-hmm.
That was what was going on in my awareness, was that I couldn't move. And I wasn't scared. I wasn't in a panic mode or what the heck happened to me or something like that. I was just as clear as a bell, knew that I couldn't move. And it's like, if you could imagine for a minute, I think the thing about life is that we have this idea that we know what's going to happen. Like we make up that we know something. And so I made up that I was going to wake up the same way I went to sleep. And when I realized that I was in a completely altered state of reality where what could move before no longer could move, and nobody knew why. And the doctors came by to check on me, to squeeze my hands. And of course I couldn't move anything, and go by feet and try to see if they'd move, and nothing happened. And that lasted for 53 hours.
Oh, goodness.
Before my body started to come back around. And what was very remarkable for me, I'm a massage therapist by trade. I've been doing it for the last 36 years, which is a pretty long time to be a massage therapist. Mm-hmm. So I'm used to touching people. I'm used to being the one that's doing the therapy. And here I was in a state where not only could I not touch anyone else, but nobody knew what was wrong with me or if I was ever going to come out of it. And there were moments when, I won't lie, that was kind of terrifying.
I can imagine.
And then I remember I was shuffled from one hospital to the other, and they did all the same tests. And one of the tests was an MRI. And I had been coached on what it was like to be in an MRI. Very loud noise, very confining, like you're being rolled into a tomb, almost. Experience, the thing comes down to your face. There's not much room between you and the top of it. And they had something around my head to keep it from moving anyway. The only thing that could move. And a blanket on me. So I literally felt like I had been enshrouded inside a tomb. And I remember for about the first 45 minutes or so, I was very uncomfortable, very unhappy, very much pain going on. And the noise was just ridiculous, loud, and like jackhammers going on over your head. And then in the next instant, it's like when you share something like this, like words don't really do it any justice. Because it's like in 1 minute, you're in the worst case scenario of what you can imagine life might be like if you live like that forever. And in the next minute, I was just totally free. And in the horrible noise of the jackhammer turned into music. And I remember even though I wasn't moving literally, I was moving in my spirit, because I remember I was just kind of bouncing to the sound of this thing. And it was just like I lifted up out of my body, not literally, but just that feeling of just being very expansive and very free. And it was an ecstatic feeling. And in that moment, I came face to face with, what if I'm like this forever? Or what if I die? Because I didn't know what possibilities were out there at that moment. And I hit this feeling of that I knew 100% without a doubt and I couldn't even tell you how I knew it, that I was okay.
Yeah.
That I was okay no matter what happened. No matter what the outcome was, I was okay. And it was from that place, this gratitude and appreciation for life itself was born.
Wow.
Because I knew that no matter what things might happen, come my way, and this last year has been a doozy so far, so I can really tell you, I really got to really see what that was like. I knew that my body would be going through different things and changes as I got older, and maybe illnesses and diseases and surgeries. But that couldn't touch who I was.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of this understanding.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. And it's amazing. Sometimes the worst things we can go through in life, we'll see that as you got to experience it.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah. So it's so interesting because I just had an MRI a couple of weeks ago. So everything you're talking about is very familiar. Yes, that noise and I just I used to be painfully claustrophobic. And so I was thinking, gosh, am I going to sort of, and the principles absolutely helped me get over a lot of that. But I thought, okay, this is going to be another test. Am I really going to be okay? And I just kept my eyes shut and I imagined myself just swimming. And I was like, just like you were saying, your spirit was moving. I was swimming in the ocean and just, it was a fact. And I didn't, an hour later, all that clanging and banging and all that noise. But I felt great. And I didn't experience the claustrophobia because of this understanding. It's amazing.
Yeah. I had 2 of them.
Oh, wow.
The second hospital, the ladies gave me Oxycontin, I think is the one that really knocks you for a loop.
Yeah.
And it was only a half an hour. So I don't remember going into it and I don't remember coming out of it. But I was very happy. And I remember the nurse coming by and she said, "Oh, I think I gave you too much." Oh, and I looked at her and I went, "Thank you." I didn't have to worry about it that time.
That's so funny.
She was really concerned, though. They were trying to keep me awake. And I was like, I'm okay. But it was a completely different okay than the okay I had been before.
Yeah, that's so funny.
It was an okay, highest height okay.
That's so funny. So you also talk about gratitude for everything that's the journey you've been on all your life. I mean, for all the different things that have made you into who you are today. So talk a little bit more about that too, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I think I'm also a laser coach, and I work with people that have had childhood traumas and maybe pain, horrible things that happened to them, or just day-to-day life things that they misunderstood, that they made decisions about when they were very young, just because of maybe the way their parents reacted to something or something they said, or a sibling might have said, or even a friend might have said. And so they made up these things about themselves, like, I'm not good at this, or I can't do that, or I'm not good enough, or nobody likes me, or, get shuffled around if you have been in foster homes and not lived, with a family. So we make up a lot of stuff about ourselves that we think are true. And what I did that myself, coming from a family with a bipolar mom and a dad that was doing the best he could to cope with 4 kids and me being the oldest. So I got to see the story that I created, even the story that I thought was true, based on my early childhood, and things that I made up were real. And what a privilege and what a beautiful thing to see somebody that actually can see through that illusion and start living their life fully right now. And that is a gift of gratitude and appreciation, to realize that you don't have to be a prisoner of your own thinking, that you can actually, let go of so much of that stuff that you have believed was true about yourself that is no longer the case.
Yeah.
I had a belief when I was young that I would never write a book. And I said, oh, I'll never write a book. I'm not good at that. If I did, nobody would read it. And it was pretty much confirmed from my family. I had a grandmother that was a writer. She wrote one book. And I challenged that when I was in clarity training. I decided that I was going to write a book. And I did. And it got published. But it was just showing myself that just because I believed something to be true, it didn't mean it was. Yeah. And it got in my way. And so the gratitude I have is in realizing that I can now do things that I never thought that I could do, that I was capable of, and find out it was just a bunch of rubbish that I didn't have to listen to. And just go on and create, because we have this endless capacity to create, and we create our world moment to moment. So if we're going to create our world, like you said earlier, why not have fun with it?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I just I was talking at the 3PGC online conference at the weekend, and my subject was letting go of self-limiting stories, breaking free of them. And same thing, I had a story in my head that, I was born illegitimate, and I took that word to be, sort of very solid, like, I'm not legitimate. And if you look it up in the dictionary, it's something about some sort of illegal, shouldn't, wasn't, can't remember the exact definition, but I made that so solid that I was less than others, and that other people were legitimate and I was not, and I wasn't enough, and all the stories I told myself for many, many years. And it's so amazing. But I'm so grateful for, and I had a lot of childhood trauma too, but just like you, I'm so grateful for everything I've been through, because I think it gives us the ability to work with a wide range of people. Because I think people, feel safe with us when they realize that we may have shared some of the same circumstances, growing up.
Yes.
But realizing it's not the circumstances themselves that have necessarily impacted us or hurt us. It's what we've made of them and carried through time and keep using to beat ourselves up. So yeah.
I mean, I'm 67 and I work with women that are 50, 60 and above, and they're still, and they know the principles. I mean, they've been introduced to the principles. And yet, it's like, what Sid would say about how we believe everything makes sense, everything except for this.
Yes.
And it's one place it doesn't work.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it all goes back to a childhood decision.
Yeah.
Every single person I've talked to, I have a memory of being 6 months old, and I made something up about being in a carriage going downhill fast with my head being squished into the corner and then bumping down over the curb and falling.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that I had that fear of things that represented that ran through my whole life.
Yeah.
And yet, if I look back at it, was just a memory of me being in this carriage. There was no words because I couldn't speak at 6 months old. But that feeling was with me. And it's the feeling that carries through time. And the feeling is thought, but it looks and feels different. Because if you carry anger with you, or disappointment with you, or fear with you, or abandonment issues with you, or whatever it is that you decided about yourself that must be true because of what somebody else said or implied, or whatever we made up, because most of it comes from what we think the other person said or what the other person meant, rather than that we made it up inside ourselves.
Yeah, I was
So,
sharing that, my father didn't acknowledge us as children, and I made that mean that I wasn't good enough, because if in my little head it was like, well, if I was good enough, of course he would want to like claim me as his daughter. So, and
yeah.
for me, it was an event, but I made meaning of it that in the innocence of a child, that he for whatever reason, he's in his separate reality. He just didn't feel like he wanted to parent, the children he had with my mother. But it's the meaning I put on it that was so debilitating, not the action so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
Well,
fascinating.
that's the key to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the meaning that we place on it and the decision that we make out of it
Mm-hmm.
that keeps rolling forward.
Yeah.
Obviously there's really no forward and there's really no future,
Yeah.
but it seems that way when we look back at it,
Mm-hmm.
because here it's still here,
Yeah.
because it's still here in memory and feeling.
Yeah.
And when we can see through that, it's amazing how what they told me is there's a difference between having an understanding about something and having an embodied understanding. It's like you get to the core root of something, and then it just literally unravels everything else, because nothing is true anymore. It's like the whole thing, it's either works one way or it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're in the illusion that it works another way other than the way it does, and you've been playing with that for the last 30 or 40, 50, 60 years, and then all of a sudden you poke a hole in it and it no longer can hold water, that's no longer true. Well, then all the other things that you thought were similar also can't be true either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's just amazing how it all unravels.
Yeah, it really is amazing work. I mean, I was in therapy for 30 years trying to make sense of it all. And it was really, the principles that I found, the freedom that I'd been looking for. And it really was I was so stuck in, well, this happened, and therefore this is, like I say, 1 and 1 makes, 20. It's like, this happened, which means this, and this is why I'm like this, and that's solid, and nobody's going to mess with that. As much as I wanted relief from it, I just didn't make sense that there was any other way of understanding it. And that's the beauty of the principles, is to go, oh my goodness, my little brain was just making stuff up, trying to make sense.
And this is where the compassion too comes in, and the loving yourself, and the compassion even for the other people, is that once you realize that they were only seeing it from their understanding, the way that made sense to them, and it really didn't have anything to do with you, even though it may have looked like it did.
Yeah.
That we can kind of just kind of let go of that.
Yeah.
And how much easier to live life when you're not carrying that around with you anymore.
No, absolutely. People say things like, well, can you forgive some of the things that were done to you? And it's almost, forgiveness is an odd word to me now, because it's almost not even applicable, because when you understand that everybody's sort of in their psychological innocence of just, as you say, doing what occurs to them to do in the moment, which makes sense to them, it really isn't personal. So you can sort of separate from it and just understand, well, I might not understand their way of thinking, but that's where separate realities come in. It's like, they're just, but I'm certainly not going to waste my life trying to figure out somebody else's thinking, for whatever reason it happened, and, that's it. But it wasn't personal to me. It didn't make me, a bad person or a broken person or anything like that. Yeah.
I think that is also the healing of this understanding, is to know that you were never broken. There was anything wrong with you. Nothing ever needed to be fixed.
Exactly.
And when we can see that, boy, life just becomes so much easier. And, back to what you had asked me earlier, even facing physical health situations, it's like, I know that if I can take with me this understanding of how life is, that I can only ever live in the moment, that even in the moments when I may be having pain or discomfort, I know that it's not going to last forever. It's like a thought doesn't last forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like if we can be at ease in our mind, we can be at ease in our bodies too.
Oh, I love that. That's the perfect place to end the show. I love that. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Laurie. It's been really a pleasure getting to meet you, even if it's over Zoom, but actually to have a chat with you. So
I've loved it.
yeah, me too. So I look forward to spending more time with you, either in person or through our Facebook groups or however you share, because you are certainly a very busy woman. I've noticed that.
Well, I'm home now, so I've got time.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, and good luck with your future, the surgeries you have coming up. And
thank you.
It was lovely spending time with you. I
appreciate it. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you're interested in learning more about my coaching and mentoring packages, please reach out to me at deladeyjones@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you.